When I was 7 years old, my father took my older brother and I to a cabin in the middle of literal nowhere for the week as a vacation. We also took our cat with us. Everybody has their own room, and I had the room furthest from the other two, positioned right where the woods started. There was a window right next to my bed, on the right side, and there was a tree right next to it that I remember getting to climb the previous day without success. The bedrooms were on the second floor, by the way, and the window didn't have any curtains or blinds to cover it. One night, I remember feeling really homesick and being unable to sleep. The cat was laying on the bed with me, and I was reading a comic book with a flashlight when around 2 o'clock I began to hear a tapping on my window. I assumed that it was just a tree branch tapping on the window because it was a windy night until I began to hear whispers, and I remember just freezing in fear and feeling like a bunch of ice water had just been poured onto me. I could hear whoever it was tapping and saying things like, "Open up, son, it's Daddy, let me in, Luke, it's cold out here," and the worst one that I heard, "Come on, it's Daddy, I just wanna cuddle." I was too paralyzed by fear to do anything but just lay on my side, facing away from the window, terrified and close to tears. I knew it wasn't my father, and in my imagination, I thought it was the boogeyman or some other creature that would gladly kill me. All the while, my cat was hissing and clawing at the guy, and I just remember holding him and burying my face in his fur because he felt like a safety net, my one defense against this guy, because I couldn't work up the nerve to call for my father. And then I remember a horrible screeching noise, and I turned around to look to see what it was, and I could see this guy, with the most maniacal grin that I've ever seen, like something out of a horror movie, dragging a pocket knife against the glass, making this horrendous noise, and I screamed bloody murder. The grin disappeared, and he just looked like a combination of horrified and absolutely full of rage, but then my father came barreling into my room with his hunting rifle, and as you can imagine, seeing this made the guy panic and just sort of drop backwards. My father just looked at me to make sure I was alright. My brother ran in before he went off to go and catch the guy before he got away, but unfortunately it wasn't a long drop and the man probably only got a few bruises from it. He was gone by the time my father got down there, and we waited the night, nobody slept, before we packed up and went back home. To this day, I don't think they ever caught the guy, though I remember my father filing a police report and me having to talk to the police to give a description, and I'm still grateful for my cat, who turns 14 this week and is still feisty as ever, for providing me comfort during that time. To whoever was outside my window that night, I hope we never meet again. Background: I live in a high-crime country, so my home has an alarm linked to private security and the property is surrounded by a high wall. There is a roll-down steel garage door in the wall which gives access directly onto the street. I had just had a baby a few days ago and was sitting in the lounge watching TV while the baby slept next to me. I hear the exterior garage door making opening noises but think it is probably just my husband stopping by to check on us, since the baby is so new and he was working close by that day. Then I realize that my dog's barking has not changed pitch. If it was my husband coming home, their barks would have changed to excited yipping. So I hobble into my bedroom, which has a view of the exterior door, and see a strange man has popped the side of the door open with a crowbar and is slithering through the gap into the property. No problem, this is why we have security, so I run, hobble, just had a baby remember, to the lounge and hit the panic button, which is supposed to set off the house alarm and send an SOS to the security company. The panic button does nothing, it is completely dead. I run back to the bedroom, my mind is just blank from panic, and by now the man is starting to climb through the window. It dawns on me that nobody is coming to help and my new baby is just in the other room. There is no time to phone anyone, so I hulk the F out, bunch up my shoulders, start screaming like a banshee and run directly at the man. I am 5 feet 2 inches with a deflated pregnant belly, so couldn't have looked very scary, but he must have shattered because he just let go of the window frame and literally fell onto the ground before scrambling up and back out of the popped open outside door. I was shaking and crying. If he had kept coming, I don't know what I would have done. My husband was home within minutes and we fixed that panic button the same day. Strange man in the window, let's not meet again. This story isn't nearly as scary as some of the ones on here, but it's still pretty creepy. I live in a split-level house in a suburb. My house is on a bit of a hill, and has a driveway leading up to it. My bedroom is in the basement, and because of the weird design of my house, my bedroom window, which is right above my bed, perfectly aligns with the walkway which is in front of my house. So, for example, when the mailman comes, I can see his feet and legs out of my window, but it's too close to the ground to see his face. I have blinds on my windows. I'm now 17, and this happened about 3 years ago. I typically go to bed extremely late, within the 3 to 4 a.m. range. One night, around 3 a.m., I was in the bathroom getting ready to go to sleep. When I walked back into my room, I saw the shadow of a pair of legs and what looked to be large boots on my blinds. Obviously, considering the time, I freaked out and just stood there, staring at the shadow. Whoever it was, stayed for about 5 minutes, just standing there, then left. The next morning I told my parents what I had seen, but they assured me it was a safe neighborhood and it was probably an animal or something. They didn't believe me. So, I attempted to go to bed as usual the next night. Around the same time, I heard the sound of footsteps outside my window and jumped off my bed and onto the floor. Again, the pair of legs just stood there for a few minutes, but this time, whoever it was, knocked on the window. I sprinted upstairs to tell my parents and they opened the front door. No one was there. They sent me back to bed, telling me my mind was playing tricks on me because I was paranoid. I didn't really sleep that night. This same thing continued happening for about a week. Every night at the same time this person would come, stand there for a few minutes, knock a couple times, then leave. I never had the courage to open my blinds and actually look outside. On the 5th or 6th night, I begged my stepdad to stay up with me and wait until 3 a.m. so I could prove to him that it was happening. Of course, as these stories always go, the person didn't come that night. At the time, I wasn't sure how they knew my stepdad was with me. I figured out a few months later that when standing at the right angle, you could actually see straight through my blinds into my room. I'm guessing this is how they knew? Again, I was told I was just being paranoid, and that it was probably because I watched too many scary videos on YouTube. The next night, the person approached the window and I hid behind my bed as usual. However, this time, the person crouched down so that I could see the outline of their whole body. They put their hands up to the window and started violently banging. Then they started saying something, but I couldn't make out the words. I decided enough was enough and I was going to call 911. I crawled back onto my bed and grabbed my phone, dialing the number. They sprinted away as soon as I started dialing the number. Again, now I understand that they could actually see me through the blinds. Again, I ran upstairs to my parents, this time sobbing and desperately begging them to believe me. My stepdad took a bat and went outside. He came back with a scarf which he said was still warm. Must have belonged to the person and they left it accidentally. After that, I got new blinds and curtains. I never saw the person again, but I still occasionally look out my window around 3 a.m. to make sure no one is there. I have no idea whether they had bad intentions, if they were just trolling me to have fun, or if they were possibly on drugs or had some sort of mental condition. I get pretty creeped out thinking about the fact that they could see me clearly through the blinds. It makes me wonder what they saw. If they ever saw me changing or doing any other personal things. Creepy stuff. Either way, I'm glad to have never seen them again. Here is a little info about me. I was, I think, 18 to 19 years old at that time. I am a female. English is not my native language, so please forgive my mistakes. This happened when I moved away from my old apartment to a new apartment near the old one. I had friends in my old apartment building, so almost every day I walked to my old apartment building to see my friends. At like 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. I used to walk back to my new apartment. It was only a 5-minute walk, so I wasn't really concerned about walking alone. I just do a L shape since my new apartment is on the next street. One day, like always, I walked from my old apartment to my new one, and there was a dude in front of the apartment building looking at me. He had his PJs on, white t-shirt, a boxer and house slippers, and he had his car parked next to him. My intent was to walk past him since I don't know him, but he stopped me. He said, "Excuse me, I live in this place, an apartment building in front of my old one, and I always watch you walking on the street and I want to meet you." 2 things scared me real bad. 1, he watches me from his window every night. 2, he couldn't know where exactly my apartment building was unless he followed me there because he can't see my new apartment building from his house. It is impossible. My guess is he stalked me and saw where I live, and the next night when he saw me he quickly grabbed his car keys, left his house and drove to my apartment building and started to wait for me there. So I politely said him sorry, I don't really want to meet someone new, and walked past him quickly as he was pleading for me to meet him. After that night, I saw him watching me from his window a couple of times, but he didn't try to talk to me. So, creepy dude with PJs, let's not meet again. This happened 5 years ago. I, then 25F, used to live alone in a small flat in England, about an hour south of London. It was a medium-sized town well known for being a good place to live, with excellent schools, low crime rates and minimal unemployment. The kind of place where people didn't panic if they left their front door unlocked when they left for work. My flat was on the first floor above pavement level, midway down a hill. There was nobody underneath me. My flat was a kind of bridge with a footpath below it, and my kitchen window was directly over a pavement on a fairly busy road. The flat had a small galley kitchen, Google if you don't know what that looks like, a living room and an upstairs bedroom. There was nobody beneath or above my flat, and because of the hill, my kitchen window was literally face on with the pavement where people walked, if this makes sense. There was a printing company opposite that went out of business and then just grass. I always used to close the blinds once the sun had gone down, but liked having the kitchen window open during the afternoons. It had a safety latch so didn't open far enough for anybody to reach in, and I was not on the ground floor, so I didn't worry too much. One day, I got home from work early, about 5:30, and as it was the summer I had the kitchen window open and the blinds open. I'm chopping garlic for my dinner, glance up and see an older man literally stood on the pavement watching me, only a few feet away. I glare back as if to say go away and decide to walk out of the kitchen into the living room as if I am talking to someone. I walk back into the kitchen, glance at the window and the man is still there, watching me with a small smile on his face. At this point I am slightly panicked. I am alone, nobody is around as I have no direct neighbors. I go into the living room and sit against the wall, clutching my phone. I didn't want him to be able to see me at all. A lot of front doors in England have a kind of two-door system. Directly on the street you have a glass door, normally with decorations on them so you can't see everything in or out, just blurred images, and a proper wooden door inside. I had been out for a smoke so the glass door was shut and locked, but the wooden door was wide open. From where I am sitting I can see the glass door, and I see a figure walking towards it. Sure enough, as it gets closer I can see that it is the man from the pavement, standing at my front door and trying to look in. He tries opening the door, but thank God I locked the outside door after my smoke, and it was a strong door. He drops a cigarette, says F it, and after 15 to 20 seconds he turns around and walks away. I run to shut and lock the wooden door and go to the kitchen window as he walks away and down the road. Just before he turns the corner he turns around and smiles at me, making eye contact. A few days later, it was on local news that a man matching his description assaulted a number of young women in my neighborhood. Creepy guy, please let's never meet. This story takes place when I was around 8 years old living in West Michigan. I'm 23 now and thinking back to it I still get chills down my back and start to feel uneasy. My family lived at the end of a cul-de-sac in a modest house with neighbors that we knew and trusted all around us. My brother and I shared a bedroom in the basement in which we had a large window that showed out to our rather large backyard. At the end of our property was a major highway that had constant noise of the cars zooming by, but not loud enough to bother us when we were sleeping. It had been a long summer day of playing with the neighbor kids in the nice weather, and my brother and I were pooped. After having our dinner and watching some of our favorite TV shows, my mother walked us downstairs and tucked us into bed. Sharing a room, my brother and I would often stay up secretly talking and playing with our action figures until it was late at night, always making sure to stay quiet because our parents slept in the room right above ours. This night was no different. After playing with our toys for about an hour and secretly giggling to ourselves at how sneaky we were, drowsiness caught up to us. We both climbed into our beds and drifted off into dreamland. In general, I am a heavy sleeper. Only loud or unusual circumstances will wake me up. So, when I woke up in the middle of the night to my room being filled with a bright bluish light, I was utterly confused. At first, I thought someone had turned on the room lights, but after rubbing my eyes and sitting up, I realized the moon was shining directly into my room. There were no clouds in the sky, so it cast a bright shaft of light from the window onto the floor. Thinking the bright moonlight was the cause of the wake-up, I made my peace with it and attempted to fall back asleep. Because of the way my bed was arranged in our room, when I slept on my side I stared directly at the floor, but not out the window. As my eyes slowly started to close, I noticed something. A shadow in the corner of the light shaft on the floor, slowing moving. It moved until it was directly in the middle of the window, casting a perfect shape of a man on the floor, right where I was staring. I froze. I couldn't move or take my eyes away from the non-moving shadow of a stranger on my floor. I especially couldn't bring myself to stare at the actual window to see what was making the shadow. To do so, I would have to poke my head out from my bed frame and the person in the window would definitely see me. Eventually, after what seemed like 10 minutes, but was probably more like 10 seconds, the shadow moved in the opposite direction that it came and disappeared. I sprang into action, yelling my head off and sprinting up the stairs to my parents' bedroom. I told them a shadow of a person appeared on my floor and blabbered about how someone was going to get me. My dad grabbed his trusty baseball bat and flashlight and made a trip around the outside of the house, looking for someone, or something that would confirm my story. He, of course, found nothing. Eventually my parents concluded that I was just imagining this all in my head or had had a bad dream, but they let me stay in their bed for the night to help calm me down anyways. The next morning, I told my younger brother, but with him only being 5 he didn't understand the spookiness of it. I, however, went into full Scooby-Doo mode. I treated this incident as my own little mystery to solve. I went outside and looked at the spot by my window, looking for clues. Underneath the window was all wood chips, as my dad was into landscaping, so it was hard to see if there were footprints. There were a few places where there were imprints, but that could have been from anyone at any time. After a few minutes of searching, I gave up. For the next few days, I struggled to sleep, many times having to have one of my parents sit on my bed with me until I dozed off. Eventually everything seemed to go back to normal, and I began to get back into my routine again. After convincing myself that I had indeed imagined it, I jokingly told my neighborhood friends about what I had saw, and unsurprisingly, most of them laughed and teased me, as close friends do, except one. My friend Matt, from the house to the left of mine. He looked afraid when I told the story. Once I was done telling it, he looked me right in the eyes and said he had the same thing happen to him 2 nights ago, one night after it happened to me. Except it had been storming and he has seen the shadow while a lightning bolt was lighting up his room's floor. Sounds like something out of a cheesy horror movie, right? Nothing ever came out of it. We came up with theories, of course. That it was the neighborhood bully trying to scare us, or that it was some drifter that had come in off the highway, but who knows. It never happened to any of us again, but I have always wondered who it was that stood at my window that night, and what would have happened if I had dared to look out the window to see them. So, stranger who stood outside my bedroom on that bright summer night, let's not meet.
Thank you for watching this episode of Zombie Reads. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment and let Zombie know what to read next. Stay undead.